ArutPerunJothi, ArutPerunJothi, Thani Perum Karunai, ArutPerunJothi, 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 Thani Perum Karunai, ArutPerunJothi. ArutPerunJothi, ArutPerunJothi, Thani Perum Karunai, ArutPerunJothi.
Yes, good morning. Vanakkam to everyone. ArutPerunJothi, ArutPerunJothi, Thani Perum Karunai, ArutPerunJothi. Velganin Perarul, Velganin Perunsir, Potrinin Perarul, Potrinin Perunsir. So this Velganin Perarul, it's a very key expression. It's a key expression in towards the end of ArutPerunJothi Agaval, when Valalar says Velganin Perarul. So what that means is he's saying victory to this omni-light of supreme compassion, victory to the grace light, victory to the light of supreme grace, and so forth. There is a deep meaning to that. Victory, vetri, velga, does not arise if there is no opposition. Okay? You don't say velga or vetri if you do not have opposition, obstacles. And therefore, by saying that Velgan in Perarul, Valalar is already indicating that this Perarul overcomes obstacles, opposition, which logically implies that there are such obstacles and oppositions, whatever the causes. So, as practitioners of Siddha Sanmargam, we have to keep that in mind. Velgan in Perarul. So, Perarul will win, but it also implies that there will be opposition, sometimes of a very severe nature. That is to say, by opposition, I mean things which oppose Arul, things which are opposed in their nature apparently opposed in their nature to the nature of Arul. So Arul is of the nature of Paripurna Imbam, and therefore the opposition will be of a nature that is contrary to Paripurna Imbam. Essentially means that the opposition that Perarul will overcome and win over is of the nature of pain, suffering, and so forth. And this is a critical juncture. Again, as Gopi pointed out, when I participated in the recitations from Valalar's songs the last time, I in fact explicitly said that I am dedicating the songs that I was reading at the time I said that I am petitioning ArutPerunJothi to show humanity the way to overcome the pandemic. That's what it is right now, the COVID-19 pandemic. And a pandemic is not to be taken lightly. we have seen what its impact has been. In 20 states in the United States, which has been very slow to deal with it, even acknowledge the severity of the problem. Now 20 states are closing schools. The U.S. death rate right now is 50, according to USA Today, but that's just a few drops in the bucket. This is projected to hit millions. And top experts, including Michael Osterholm and Mark Lipsitch at Harvard, is a top expert on viruses, infectious diseases. Michael Osterholm, last week, he projected that this will require maybe over 90, 80 to 90 million hospitalizations, and projected death of 480,000. And Mark Lipsitch at Harvard University, again, said that 40 to 70% of the world's adult population will be afflicted by this. And if that happens, according to the models, that's the prediction. And if that happens, you can expect millions of deaths. So it's a very grave situation. And what does Sanmargam, what do the teachings of Vallalar offer us? That's the big question here. But we have to understand the gravity of the situation. This isn't business as usual. This isn't something that we're just going to face for a week and then, back to business as usual. No. Again, Michael Osterholm is one of the top experts on infectious diseases in the United States. He says, don't think that this is some kind of blizzard. Okay, blizzard comes and hits, and then, we're back to business, slowly we recover. No, this is like a winter. That means you're looking at a season. So just like you have a flu season going on for months and months, you've got a COVID-19 season. It's going to go on for months, and that's the way we have to think about it. And take measures, precautions to protect ourselves, but we have to think ahead in terms of months. This is not something that's going to go away in a week or two, and that realization seems to be slowly sinking in the minds of Americans who I think initially thought that this was some Chinese, this was something confined to China and so forth. As you know, it is now Europe has been designated as an epicenter of this disease. Italy's health system has been severely strained. And if you want to know what the outside of China, Italy is the country that has been really affected by this. The casualties in Italy now have gone past 1,000. Okay? So, altogether, 3 days ago, according to AlJazeera.com as news, more than 4,600 people have died and more than 126,000 infected globally. The deaths have jumped up quite dramatically over a period of days in Italy, and that's actually a mirror. And Italy has, in fact, universal health care, which is better than the United States, and with all that, they are now severely burdened with the issues of dealing with people that have this infection. We can only imagine how things will turn out here in the United States. So the opposition to Peraru is pretty severe. We have to bear that in mind. We cannot deny the reality of it. We can't stick our heads in the sand and so forth and imagine that it will go away. Now, obviously, Vallalar has anticipated all this in many of his writings. But before I address the question, the central question here is what does Vallalar's teachings offer us in the face of this pandemic? How can we be benefited by the teachings of Vallalar? That's the question. That's the central question. I want to point out before I try and address that, subject to the limitations of my capacities and knowledge, I want to say that Sutta Sanmargam, the teachings of Vallalar, Sutta Sanmargam is not an anti-scientific, anti-medicine, faith-healing cult. Once again, it is not an anti-scientific, anti-medicine, faith-healing cult. Vallalar advocated the use of medicines. If we look at the Indriya Virkam part, you can see that he emphasizes the use of medicines. Vallalar's teachings are not anti-scientific, they're not anti-medicine. And if you look at what he has said on the Indriya Virkam, which is the discipline of the body, he is not only talking about regulating the body, taking care of the body, he also says, Kala Vedathalum, Ushna Avasatalum, Tare Nerndal, Aushadi Vagaigalalum, Baudiga Mulangalalum, Sarabeda Astaparisa Sandiratalum, Mulanga Pranavadhyana Sangalpatalam, Tare Tavistu Kollal. Okay, and most of you know all the other other elements of Indriya Virkam, the care of the body, the discipline of the body. So that's the first point we have to keep in mind, that Vallalar, as he said in this advice under Indriya Virkam, Kala Vedathalum, Ushna Abasatalum, Tare Nerndal, Aushadi Vagaigalalum, Baudiga Mulangalalum. So these are medicines, physical means of dealing with disease. So, Sutta Sanmargam is not an anti-scientific, anti-medicine, faith-healing cult. We're not just simply saying we're going to heal ourselves by faith and not use the science of medicine. If that were the case, Vallalar wouldn't have emphasized Aushadi Vagaigalalum, Baudiga Mulangalalam, reference to medicines and other physical means. Not just medicines, but other physical means. We also know that Vallalar compiled a catalog of herbs and their uses in ailments or diseases. And before I finish this talk, which is not going to be extended, I'm going to try to keep it concise. Before I finish, I will mention some of the herbs that we can use, or we should seriously consider using by way of protecting ourselves from COVID-19, the disease that the coronavirus is unleashing. It is essentially respiratory. It affects the throat and lungs, but it also afflicts other organs like the liver and so forth, kidneys. But it starts in the throat and then starts, in most of the cases, by destroying the lungs, which is breath, breathing, respiration, central to life. So, in addition, Vallalaar emphasized the study of human biology, the structure and nature of the body, Pinda Vicharam. That obviously includes the study of diseases, because diseases attack the body and can destroy the body. And their causes, viruses, parasites, bacteria, and so forth. In this case, it's COVID-19, coronavirus, which has come into the human body from a non-human animal source. There is some views that bats are involved. There's another view that says pangolins. These are scaled animals, animals that have scales. And some people in China treat them as delicacies, maybe other parts of Asia, treat them as delicacies and so forth. And the location of the initial transmission is the Wuhan wet market, as they call them. They bring all kinds of creatures to this place and slaughter them right there or sell them. And it's a horrible situation. I sent a video clip, a YouTube video clip to Prasanna and Gopi on this Wuhan market. It's horrible. But it's not confined to that. I mean, it's all over there. Anywhere animals are herded together, abused, mistreated, tortured, and slaughtered for food, it's the same problem that we are facing. I think that from the standpoint of Suddha Sanmargam, it's quite reasonable to hold that this is all the result of the evil karma that humans are accumulating as a result of their mistreatment and slaughter of animals for food. It really underlines the case for vegetarianism. One of the main cases, because the other fundamental reason in Vallalaar is Jivakarunyam. But we can see that the consumption of animal meat, animal flesh, carries with it a number of risks, including transmission of viruses. Some of you may know that the HIV virus got into the human body through chimpanzee meat. Chimpanzees were killed and eaten in Africa. So the serious threat of viruses coming into the human body from a non-human body, flesh, meat, is a very serious reason to abstain from pulao or non-vegetarian food and to embrace the path of vegetarianism, as Vallalaar advocated strongly. In fact, as you know, the entrance to Satyanyana Sabai, he had written Polai Polai, Tavattavar Mattume Ulle Varavendum. Those who abstain from murder and the eating of animal flesh, only they should enter. So, that's a very important teaching that we can all take to heart and practice at this juncture. The practice of vegetarianism, not just vegetarianism, but also letting animals live in their natural habitat, not capturing them, abducting them, and then putting them in cages, confining them all in very small spaces, and subjecting them to pain, suffering, misery, and then, of course, slaughter. We really need to give that up. There's a central point that should be drawn, central lesson that should be drawn from this pandemic. There were others before with similar sources of origin, SARS and this and that, again, coming from even the 1918 influenza, avian virus that came from the bird family. So that's a very important reason to seriously think about. We are endangering the survival of this precious human body by consuming animal flesh, whatever it is. It can be, according to one account, bat meat and so forth. People having all kinds of bizarre cravings for different sorts of animal flesh. And it carries a very heavy price, as we are saying now. So, the teaching of Siddha Sanmargam, the teaching of Vallalar, that's foremost in this context, is to stop, to refrain, to abstain from non-vegetarian food, which means consumption of animal flesh and meat and so forth, and to stick only to vegetarianism. That's one essential condition. Now, if I'm a vegetarian, perhaps by habit or tradition, and then I do other things that don't make sense, I won't necessarily have the protection. So there are a number of conditions that I'll go into, but the foremost is vegetarianism. If you don't meet this condition, you will not have the protection of ArutPerunJothi's Arut. That is the supreme medicine. ArutPerunJothi is the supreme healer. But ArutPerunJothi is not a salesperson that you can go and say, hey, here's the money, you sell me your product. Okay? You can't boss ArutPerunJothi around. You can't make demands. There are laws, I'll go into them later, and conditions that we have to, in all humility, obey and follow. And the foremost is, of course, Jivakaranyam, which in this context means do not mistreat animals and do not take them from their natural habitat and put, gather them all together in a market and slaughter them right there and sell their flesh and drink their blood and that kind of stuff. You can do it in a kind of crude way, as it is done in some of these markets in Asia, or you can do it in a sophisticated way, as it's done in many Western countries. It's still the same thing. Here you don't see it. They're all slaughtered in places away from people's sight, and then later you go to a butcher shop, you see their bodies hanging, but it's still the same thing. It is the violation of the law of Jivakaranyam, Kadavul's or ArutPerunJothi, the ultimate divine reality's law. And if we violate that, then we open ourselves to all kinds of suffering. And this should be the main lesson to draw from this. And as I said, this is not unique. Other, SARS and even the 1918 influenza epidemic and so forth were caused by viruses coming into the human body from non-human bodies. Even, as I said, HIV transmitted from chimpanzee to humans. So it's a very serious thing to learn to respect animals, leave them in their natural habitat, and of course, foremost is not to kill them and then eat their flesh. So this is all part of Vallalar's emphasis on the conditions of living that we need to follow in order to open ourselves to the healing of the Supreme Healer, ArutPerunJothi, and its supreme medicine, which is Arut. It's not something you can just demand, stuff myself with bat meat or something, pangolin meat, and then claim that ArutPerunJothi should just miraculously cure me. That doesn't make any sense. There are conditions to follow, to meet, because we're dealing with Arul Niyati, divine law. That's the most fundamental level to recognize here. There is ArutPerunJothi, there is the supreme divine reality, and there are laws. Kadavul Viditta Arul Niyati, Arulakkinai, divine laws that we need to understand, and Vallalar has given us an account of what these laws are and emphasized them. In the Jivakarnya Workam, you may know that he says that killing the animals and then using their flesh to feed some other hungry being is completely contrary to divine law. So we have to understand that there are divine laws, and if we violate, foremost is Karunyam, Jivakarunyam, and if we violate that, then we get into the second level, which is the law of karma, Vinay. And the Vinay, of course, can be good or bad, based on whether you are conforming to Jivakarnya Varukam or going against it. And again, this is a matter of law and consequences of either conforming to law or trying to go against the law. This is the realm of karma. This is the second level. And then the third level is already there implied by the second level. These are consequences flowing from whether we act in accordance with Jivakarnya Varukam or whether we are not acting in accordance with Jivakarnya Varukam. Now, there are other conditions also that come into play, but at the third level, this is the level of effects, cause and effect. So I don't understand the nature of fire, and I put my hand into it. I don't understand the nature of explosives, and I play with, I stock up explosives and I'm running around close to them with a lighted match. You know that there are going to be certain effects as a result of irte. That is nature, the properties of things. So you consume animal flesh and you put them in very horrible conditions, and you're in that environment, there are going to be some consequences. The viruses are going to get transmitted. That's the nature of some of these viruses. They get transmitted. The coronavirus basically gets transmitted through the medium of air, droplets, aerosol transmission. So you can wear gloves and all that, but that will not necessarily prevent the transmission. You have to, of course, wear a very tight face mask. It can't have any kind of gaps. It has to basically go over your nose and mouth and extend almost to your ears, bottom of your ears. You wear those kinds of masks, then you have some protection, and of course, use cleaning agents. Gopi mentioned vinegar. Vinegar has antiviral, antibacterial properties. So spraying vinegar to clean and washing your hands in hot water and vinegar is one of the things we can do. But I'll get into that later. Right now, just again take note of the fact that Sutta Sanmargam is not anti-scientific, anti-medicine. It's not some kind of faith-healing cult. We take into account the Pinda Vicharam, the inquiry into the nature of the body, inclusive of the study of diseases, their causes and their cures, and we use that knowledge. That is why Vallalar in the 1860s said, Kala Vedathalam, Ushna Avasattalam, very modification, changes in time and conditions. And heat, he's referring to heat, Ushna Avasattalam, and of course it includes other natural conditions. If your body faces obstacles in the form of ailments, of diseases, and so forth, then you use medicines and other physical means. Aushadhi Vagegalalam, Baudiga Mulangalalam. He mentions other things too, like breathing exercises or pranayama and so forth, yoga. Also, we need to take into account that the ideal of life without a disease, Noyatra Varvat, that's present in the earliest poems, songs of Vallalar. Noyatra Varval Nan Varavendram. I should live a life without disease. And it continues throughout his life in various letters, culminating in verses in the Agava, where he declares, victoriously, triumphantly, he declares, Udarpini anaithayam, Uyirpini anaithayam, Adarpara Tavutta Arutsiva Marunde. The supreme medicine of the Omni-Light has cured me of all ills of the body and all ills of life. Udarpini anaithayam, Uyirpini anaithayam. Uyirpini is a very important notion to understand. He's not only talking about Udarpini, diseases of the body, but he also speaks of afflictions, ailments, diseases of the life force or life energy. These consist in lack of energy, weakness of sensibility, weakness of response, and so forth. And all of these afflictions of the body and the life force or life energy, Udarpini and Virpini, were removed by the Supreme Healer, ArutPerunJothi. And they were removed because he fulfilled the conditions and qualified himself to receive the supremely healing action of the Omni-Light, ArutPerunJothi. And that's what we need to keep in mind. We have to follow again the conditions, the rules, the laws of living that Vallalar has specified in Jivagarnya Workam and other places, the Vinnapams and so forth. You can't just continue to do whatever you're doing in a state of ignorance, and then when you have a problem like Dini, like COVID-19, suddenly start screaming and saying, ArutPerunJothi, cure me of this and protect me from this. Things don't work that way. This is a law-governed universe. There are laws all the way from the level of Maya or matter, stretching all the way up to divine reality, Aruniyadi, and so forth. And if I choose to ignore those laws, I am going to suffer from the consequences of going against those laws or being indifferent to those laws. And this is a really, really important point we have to bear in mind, Sutta Sanmargam, and that's part of my clarification of the point that this is not some faith-healing cult, can't just suddenly scream and expect ArutPerunJothi, the Supreme Healer, to cure you of whatever you have. when you have violated the rules, the laws, and you're still continuing to do that, and you're not meeting the conditions that must be met. Okay, I hope I made that point clear, because especially in countries like India or even other countries, influenced by all these religious superstitions. Oh yeah, I just bored myself with all kinds of food, sugary foods, fatty foods, and so forth. And then when I develop a serious ailment, I'm going to run to Tirupati. I'm going to run to Sabarimala or whatever other place it is, or Lourdes in France, associated with healing, and then I'm going to expect to be miraculously healed. And then I'll go back to doing the same thing. Okay? That's childish and stupid. That's what it is. So the sensible approach that Suddha Sanmargam advocates and imposes on us is to try and understand the laws that are at work, including the laws of human biology, the laws of disease, the laws of healing, and so forth. And more importantly, the spiritual laws, the ethical and spiritual laws, Jivagaranyam and Anmaneya Varumaippadu, compassion and what may be called spiritual solidarity or spiritual sense of unity with all living beings. If you have compassion rooted in that spiritual sense of solidarity with all living beings, you're not going to have markets where you pile up animals and slash their throats, or even, sophisticated forms of doing it. They're doing it here in the West. You won't be involved in any of that stuff. And at the personal, individual level, it means completely refrain from non-vegetarianism and completely refrain from any kind of participation in the mistreatment of non-human life. Going back to the other point about the ideal of life without disease. As I said, Vallalar had aspired for it from his childhood. Noyatra Varvul Nan Varavendam is one of his very early poems or songs, and it continues throughout in various letters. But before I take a look at all that, let me also point out that in Jivagarnya work, disease is pini. Tamil word is pini. Disease is one of the afflictions that Jivakarnya Workam asks us to remove in others. And it's called Apara Jivakaranyam, but it is still part of lower compassion, the highest compassion being the prevention or alleviation of hunger and murder or torture resulting in death. But pini is classified as, removal of pini is Apara Jivakaranyam, means lower compassion, but still part of the ethic of compassion. We can't neglect it by saying it's aparasivagaranya or it's lower compassion. It's still part of the ethic of compassion. And what Vallalar has to say here is interesting in the Jivagaranya work. I'm going to read this again, this passage that I have read on earlier occasions. Jivagaranyatthirkku mukkiyamaana lakshiyam eduvenil ஆன்மாக்களெல்லாம் இயற்கை உண்மை ஏகதேசங்களாகவும் இயற்கை விளக்கமாகிய அருள் அறிவுக்கறிவாய் வழங்குவதற்கு ஒற்றுமை உரிமை இடங்களாயும் இருக்கின்றன என்றும் அந்த ஆன்மாக்கள் சீவர்களாகி அதிகரிப்பதற்கு பூதகாரிய தேகங்களே உரிமையாக இருக்கின்றனவென்றும். Okay, to this point, what he is saying is the souls need bodies, physical bodies, in order to come out of their ignorance. Their initial state is ignorance, complete absence of knowledge and sensibility and so forth. That's where we have all come from, into the bodies. And these physical bodies are required for the souls to emerge from their state of ignorance, have experience, have response, sensibility, gain knowledge, and then grow towards the realization of the Omni-Light or ArutPerunJothi. So, அந்த ஆன்மாக்கள் சீவர்களாகி அதிகரிப்பதற்கு பூதகாரிய தேகங்களே உரிமையாக இருக்கின்றன என்றும், the bodies, physical bodies are necessary, And அந்த தேகங்களில் ஆன்மாக்கள் சீவர்களாகி அதிகரியாவிடல் ஆன்ம விளக்கம் மறைப்படும் என்றும் அதனால் அருள் விளக்கம் வெளிப்படாதென்றும் அப்போது மூடம் உண்டாகும் என்றும் அதுவே ஆன்மாக்களுக்கு பந்தமாகும் என்றும் அது பற்றி அவசியம் பூதகாரிய தேகம் வேண்டும் என்றும். All this is emphasizing the importance of bodies for souls. Obviously, if as souls, you and I are souls, and if we could have done without bodies, we wouldn't be here in this living body. The fact that we are in this living body means that there was some necessity of coming into a living body, and Vallalar explains what that necessity is. It is to grow out of ignorance towards knowledge, and thereby become also a medium for the manifestation of not only Anma Valakam, which is the inherent light and knowledge of the soul, but also Arul Valakam, which is the omni light, the light of the divine reality. So the inherent light of the soul and the intrinsic light, the inherent light of the omni light, the ArutPerunJothi, cannot be manifested in the living bodies, in the souls, and their living bodies, without birth in a living body. Okay? Or we can also put it as the growth towards knowledge cannot take place if the souls do not take bodies. And if they don't take bodies, then they are in a state of bondage. Anmakalku bandham. This is a very interesting notion. The soul without a living body, without being a living entity in a body, is in a state of ignorance, is subjected to certain limitations. That Vallalar uses the word bandham. Therefore, to get out of those the limitations of ignorance, ajnanam, every soul, a soul needs a living body so that it can have experience. It can have certain capacities of knowledge, understanding, cognition, and so forth. And that's how it comes out of that state of ignorance, which is bandham and also mudam, Tamil words for ignorance, called bondage or severe limitations. And then he goes on to say that Bhudagariya Degangalakku Mai Mudat Karanamagalal and the Mayan Digatpa Jalangalagiya Pasi, Dagam, Pini, Ichai, Elumai, Bayam, Kolai, and Bavagalal and the Degangalakku Adikari, Abayangal, Nerudum, and Room. This is the point that first he has shown that souls need living bodies. So there's reincarnation and all that. When this living body dies, the soul is like a tenant in a house, so it will find another house or another living body. We've addressed those things in past talks. After making the point that the soul needs the living body, then he goes on to speak of the abayangal, the dangers, the afflictions that assail the living body. Can be human or animal body. They are all assailed by these dangers. And he mentions these dangers: hunger, thirst, pini or disease. And then ichai, these are various, you can call them appetites or desires. Elimai, this is applicable to human beings, poverty, but it's also applicable to animals if they are deprived of their needs. Then they are in that condition of elumai or deprivation, fear, bayam, and then kolai, murder, and so forth. Bhudagariya Degangalukku Maya Mudatkaranamagalal and the Maya and Bigatpa Jalangalagiya Pasi, Dagam, Pini, Ichai, Elumai, Bayam, Kolai, and Bavagalal and the Degangalukku Adikari, Abayangal, Nerudum, and Room. Flat out recognition, acknowledgement that once the soul takes the living body, which it must in order to get out of its state of ignorance, then the living body, because of its constitution, Bhudakariyanga Degangalukku Mai Mudat Karanamagalal, and Mai here is used in the sense in which it's used in Saiva Siddhanta. We have to really remember that. That is primordial matter, the original stuff out of which the universe developed and which constitutes the stuff which constitutes the objects, the primal stuff, the essential stuff that constitutes all the objects in the universe, including bodies. And that stuff, Maya, is subjected to, it's very interesting, Vigarpa Jalanga. So Vigarpa means distortions, deformations, deformations. And Jalanga, you really can't predict what sort of deformation or distortion is going to happen. Maya and Vigarpa Jalanga, that primal stuff out of which constitutes the different objects in the universe is subjected to various kinds of modifications. You can even use the word random mutations, including random lethal mutations or modifications. Okay, and we see that's the case. And he's saying this is in the very stuff of the universe, not just in cells and so forth, genes and so forth. You know, we know from the science of genetics that there are random mutations, meaning they can't predict it. So these mutations or sudden modifications, changes, Vallalar is saying here, happen as a result of the nature of the stuff of the universe, the stuff Maya, which is the Mudarkaranam, which is the source of all the objects that we see in the universe, including living bodies. So as a result of these random mutations, changes, which are often in the form of deformations, you will have pasi, hunger, dagam, thirst, peeing, disease, and so forth. So right here we have an explanation of the source of disease. Disease again is the result of the nature of the stuff that constitutes body. And in just the way it's unintelligent to expect fire not to burn or water not to produce the effect of wetting, it's also unintelligent to expect Maya not to produce these effects of hunger, thirst, disease, and all the other things that he has specified, basically sources of suffering. So the point is that we live in a universe. This is the universe of Asutta Maya. In Saiva Siddhanta, this is impure matter. That's the universe we live in, a universe constituted of impure matter. And it's impure because it's subjected to decay, disintegration, random mutations, random changes, producing pain, suffering, and all that. That's the nature of our universe. And if you understand this point, then you're not going to be shocked by the occurrence of pini or diseases, including outbreaks, epidemics, pandemics, like the COVID-19. So, on the path of Suddha Sanmargam, we should have a very clear understanding of what makes this happen, or what makes this possible. This is the very nature of Asutta Maya, impure matter. Okay? So, you don't have fire and then you don't expect the fire to not burn you if you put your hand in. So if you're living in a universe of impure matter, then be prepared for all these different sources and causes of suffering. But he doesn't just stop there. He doesn't just stop by saying, yeah, you're living in a universe of impure matter, Asutta Maya, and that Maya is Vigarpa Jalanga, pasi, dagam, pasi is hunger, dagam, thirst, pini, disease, and so forth, will assail the living bodies and the souls that inhabit those living bodies. He just doesn't stop there. He goes on to say, Appadi abayangal neridamal, Karanendriya sagayangalai petra tam arivai kondu, Sarva Jakradiyodu muyarchi seidu, Taduttu kolvadharku, Takka Vallabha Sugandaram, Thievargalukku Arulal Kodukkapattadendrum. very important point to take in conjunction with the earlier one. What Valala is saying is, yes, these are dangers that come and assail the living bodies, and these dangers have their roots in the very nature of this primordial stuff, asuttamaya, impure matter. But as a result of the workings of grace, divine compassion, we have capacities and we have intelligence to understand the nature of these dangers, the risks, the threats, and so forth, and to act with great caution, circumspection, forethought, foreknowledge, and prevent these dangers from assailing us or from destroying us. Okay, so we have the freedom, the capacity, the capability, the intelligence as a result of the workings of grace, Aru, divine compassion, to gain knowledge of these dangers and to protect ourselves from them. And that's where, of course, science plays a very important role, Andavicharam and Pindavicharam, as Vallalar puts it, inquiry into the nature of objects, the universe, and inquiry into the nature of living bodies, Pindavicharam, and he puts the human body, the inquiry into the nature of the human body, central concern, obviously, for human beings. So, மாயின் விகற்ப ஜாலங்களாகிய பசி, தாகம், பிரி, இச்சை, எளிமை, பயம், கொலை என்பவைகளால் அந்த தெய்வங்களுக்கு அடிக்கடி அபாயங்கள் நேரிடும் என்றும், அப்படி அபாயங்கள் நேரிடாமல் கரணேந்திரிய சகாயங்களை பெற்ற தம் கரணேந்திரிய சகாயங்கள் means the adjuncts or the capacities and the adjuncts, capacities of cognition, cognitive instruments. We have cognitive instruments. And we have the intelligence. Karanendriya Sagayangal, cognitive instruments, including senses, and Arivu, that is intelligence. We have both, and we are expected to use them with great caution and mindfulness, and make serious efforts to prevent these dangers or to overcome them. சர்வ ஜாக்கிரதையோடு முயற்சி செய்து தடுத்துக் கொள்வதற்கு தக்க வல்லப சுதந்திரம் சீவர்களுக்கு அருளால் கொடுக்கப்பட்டதென்றும். We have these cognitive instruments, we are endowed with these cognitive instruments and intelligence by that supreme compassion force, Arul Sakti, and we are expected to make use of this to prevent and to overcome these dangers, and not only to prevent and overcome those dangers for the individual, but also use it to help others. அந்த சுதந்திரத்தை கொண்டு சீவர்களெல்லாம் தேகங்களிலிருந்து அபாயங்களை நீக்கி ஆன்மலாபத்தை பெறுவதற்கு முயற்சி செய்ய கடவர் என்றும். So we are assailed by these dangers, but we have the cognitive instruments and the intelligence that can help us to understand and protect ourselves from and overcome these dangers, including, of course, disease. And we're supposed to be doing that and growing in spiritual knowledge, anmalabha, growing towards the spiritual enlightenment. And then he goes on to say, Uruvagayalum, Ajakrudayalum, Pasidagam, Pini, Itchai, Elimai, Bayam, Kolai, and Bavigalal, Varum, Abayangalai, Navati Sedukolamattamal, Varundaginra Sivargal Vishayathil, Avagalai, Navati Sedukka Vendamendru. That is to say that it's not just use your cognitive instruments and your intelligence to protect yourself from these dangers, but help those who are unable to do so for various reasons. They are not able to prevent and protect themselves from hunger, thirst, disease, and so forth. And he mentioned some of the factors that play a role in these cases. Urvage, that is karma, and ajakrave, carelessness, heedlessness. So one of the theories out there is that, you see, Wuhan has a BSL-4 facility. These are bioweapons, biological weapons, germ warfare weapons facilities, real evil that needs to be abolished. And in Suddha Sanmargam, that would be a foremost thing to get rid of, because it's targeting living bodies, by developing pathogens, new strains of pathogens and viruses and so forth, to use when there's war as part of germ warfare. Okay? I mean, you want an example of evil, this is it. And Wuhan has one of these laboratories, and one of the theories is that there was an accidental release of this COVID-19 because it spreads fast. It seems to have some special properties. They call it gain of function modifications. That means it's kind of like you take something and you tamper with it, you modify its genes so that it becomes more deadly. I hope that makes sense. And these laboratories engage in that kind of gain of function modifications with various pathogens or germs that can produce severe diseases, fatal diseases. So one of the theories is that it leaked out of something like that in Wuhan. Now some Chinese officials are accusing the U.S. military. U.S. Army apparently went there. There was a visit to Wuhan in October, November, something like that, and they're claiming that the U.S. Army may have introduced it. Anyway, that's not accepted by most of the scientists, but it does raise the issue. Should we be doing this kind of stuff, bioweapons research, piling things up for germ warfare? It's a complete violation of Jivagarmya Virthu to try and develop germ warfare weapons, bioweapons that are going to destroy human bodies with horrible diseases. Okay? It's a crime against humanity. And there are many figures that have condemned this, and I'm actually communicating with one of them, Francis Boyle. He's written a book, I think it's called Bioweapons in Terrorism, and he's very strongly condemned this. He calls this a Nazi death science. Nazi science of death. You know, the Nazis were also into it, and you may know that the Nazis were the first to use chemical weapons, gas, in World War I. In any case, that's something also we got to keep in mind in this context. Do you want to add to the Abhayangu that already assailed the living bodies by adding new forms of Abhayam or danger coming from these bioweapons, whose sole purpose is to spread disease and destroy living bodies, human bodies? In any case, I hope that these lines that I read from Jivagarmyam give us an understanding of why you have things like disease and so forth, and also what is the way out. I mean, we have cognitive instruments and intelligence, and if we misuse them, not only, failing to use them to understand and overcome these dangers and to assist others to do so, but actually misuse them and pervert them and employ them to develop bioweapons and so forth. And I'm not talking about, they are also biome weapons. Biome in Tamil means terror, fear. They are also biome weapons, but they are bioweapons. They are targeting human bodies for destruction. By spreading disease and so forth, by using pathogens and so on, viruses and so on as a means. So we're looking at some very serious things, and this COVID-19 is really 2 slaps or maybe 4 or 5 slaps in our faces to awaken us to these realities that we have to understand and get rid of. And, the main point here is in Suddha Sanmargam, we're trying to understand things. We're not saying faith and then screaming and falling on our knees and praying and so forth. We're trying to use our intelligence. And our approach to ArutPerunJothi is based on intelligence, not on blind belief, superstition, fear, and so forth. And that's why science, including the science of medicine, has a central place in Siddha Sanmargam, and scientific knowledge should play a very important role in helping practitioners of Siddha Sanmargam to regulate their lives and improve their understanding of the world. Now, I mentioned that Vallalar had this ideal of living a life without disease, noyatra varval nan var vendum, right from his childhood. And he was not just interested in just overcoming disease just for himself as some kind of selfish thing. No, this was for humanity. And not just for humanity, for all living beings, because all living beings are assailed by this. The overcoming of disease. And you can see evidence of that, as I said also in that line, noyatra varval nan var vendum, I should live a life without disease, right from his childhood, boyhood. A line that that's part of a poem or song that he composed in his boyhood. But there are other indications of this. For instance, in many of his letters. Now, many of his letters, in fact, all of them, or perhaps 99.9% of them, refer to Tirgayam. So, just an example, Chiranjeevi Ratna Mudaviyar avargatku Sivanugrahasthal Tirgayilum Sagala Sampathum Sivanyanamum Menmelum Undavnavaga. Tirgayil means full span of life, which is generally in the Indian tradition is 100 years or more, at least 100 years. Okay, Tirgayil. The emphasis on a full span of life, wishing his correspondence a full span of life, that's there throughout his letters. Which again tells us his commitment to this ideal of life without disease, and the ideal is not just for himself, but for all people, all living beings. One of his letters to Ratna Mudaviyar, he says that இனி ஈராண்டு பலவகை கருவிகளால் பதப்படுத்தி ஏழைகள் பலருக்கும் உபயோகிக்கும் பொருட்டு நம்மாட்டிருந்த ஒரு பேருழப்பு ஓர் அசாக்கிரதையால் தன்மை கிடப்பட்டது. He's talking about some medicines, some other means that he had prepared after a lot of effort and time, and it got spoiled. It became defective or deficient due to some carelessness or accidentally. இங்கனம் பெரினும் நம் பெருமான் திருவுள்ள குறிப்பு அங்கனம் இருந்ததென்று கருதி அமைதி பெற்றாமாயினும். So he says he accepted that as divine will or act happening in accordance with divine will, and took solace in that form of resignation. பெற்றோமாயினும் பிரிகளால் பிரிப்புண்ட ஏழைகளை கருதும் போதெல்லாம் ஒரு சிறிது உள்ளம் புடைப்பேர்க்கின்றோம். He prepared this, as he says, for ஏழைகள், poor people, who couldn't afford any medicines. And he says that it got spoiled accidentally through some negligence. But he derived comfort from the thought that it was all in accordance with divine will. And yet, when he sees பிணிகளார் பிரிப்புண்ட ஏழைகளை கருதும் போதெல்லாம் ஒரு சிறிது உளம் புடைப்பெயர்க்கின்றோம். Despite all that, when he sees poor people suffering from diseases, he's heartbroken. He's distressed. And then he goes on to say that he's determined to overcome all these obstacles in 2 or 3 weeks or so. And then he plans to visit Ratna Mudaviyar. So, see, he's not just giving up. He's still saying, I'm going to overcome this setback in a few weeks, and maybe prepare the medicines again for those poor people that were stricken with disease. And then once that's done, he will visit Ratna Mudaviyar. Then he ends that letter with Varu Malavum, before I come there, Dega Mudaliya Karuvigalai Karaiganitsit Varuga. This is a refrain in almost all of his letters. Dega Mudaliya Karuvigalai Karaiganitsit Varuga. That means take care of the body, and it's not just the body, but also the instruments of cognition, of the mind. Take care of the body and mind. That's what he's saying. Careful. Protect them from these dangers and so forth, obstacles. And Ciranjeevi, that's another invocation I pointed out in earlier talk. Ciranjeevi is immortality. That's also something he invokes. So the ideal of a life without disease and immortality, these are recurrent in his writings. You can see the strong aspiration documented in all of his letters. There's another letter where he says that Ini inganam oruvar piniyalar veru gadiyindri enpar pugaladaindirukkindranar. A few people stricken by some disease have in desperation taken refuge with him. They have no other means, no other recourse. Ini inganam oruvar piniyalar veru gadiyindri enpar pugaladaindirukkindranar. அப்பினி சிறிது சாந்தப்பட்டவுடன் பிரயாணப்பட்டு அவ்விடம் வர நிச்சயித்திருக்கின்றேன். So he says, once they get cured, I will then make the travel. I guess he was getting invitations by Ratna Mudaliyar and others who were eager to see him. And I think they used to keep bothering him to come and visit them. And this is his response. But it's interesting. He's saying that he's taking care of some people that have taken refuge with him and that are sick. And they have no other means. So this evidently means that Vallalar, had medicines, herbal medicines. He in fact did a catalog of herbs and their effects, and have a chance to look at a couple of herbs that he mentions that we could use in the context of this pandemic. But he says, it's very clear that he was concerned about people that were stricken with disease, and his practice of compassion included the preparation of medicines and the proper advice, herbal medicines, and proper advice to these individuals. So he was not just simply theorizing or preaching about these things, he was actually practicing. But the preoccupation with the suffering of disease and finding the ways of overcoming this, it was there in Vallala. And you can see even in the Agaval, you can see how he celebrates his discovery of the solutions to this problem of disease. It's a recurrent problem in the human condition and a source of great suffering, as we can see today with the pandemic. Then there's another letter, 1864, where he says, again he mentions Dirgayilum Tiradegamum, full span of life and a strong and healthy body. Tiradegam means a strong and healthy body. Dirgayil means a full span of life, 100 years in the Indian tradition. And he is always wishing these things on others. And he says here, Tangalukku Irmalal Degam Apakuvamaga Irkindradaga Tabalil Enakku Therivittar. அவர் தெரிவித்து தொடங்கி என் நினைப்பெல்லாம் தங்களிடமாகவே இருக்கிறது, நித்திரை பிடிக்கிறதும் இல்லை, நான் தொடங்கிய காரியங்கள் ஒன்றும் நடக்கிறதும் இல்லை, மனம் அலைப்பாய்ந்து கொண்டே இருக்கிறது. Saying that when he heard that Ratna Madhaviyar had respiratory issues, and as you know, COVID-19 is a respiratory disease, kills your lungs. Irumalaal Degam Apakuvamaga Irikiradaga Tabalil Enakku Therivittar. He heard that Ratna Madhaviyar had, a cough and other issues. respiratory issues. And he says that once he heard that, he was very anxious about Raghu Muraliar's condition, and that he kept constantly thinking about it, and he's not able to complete any of his tasks because of this worry and anxiety about Raghu Muraliar's health. And then then he also goes on to say in that letter, அதிக உழைப்பு எடுத்துக் கொள்ளாமல் சாக்கிரதையாக வர வேண்டும், கடினமான ஔஷதங்களை கொள்ள வேண்டாம். Do not strain yourself, subject yourself to stress due to work and all that. Try to get rid of the stress, and even if necessary try to reduce the workload. And then he says, kadinamana aushadhangalai kolla vendam. That is, do not take medicines that are too strong. That's an interesting piece of advice. And we know, antibiotics, again, if you use very strong antibiotics, the bacteria and so forth develop a resistance. And he seems to have anticipated that in the 1860s. Kadinamana aushadhangalai kolla vendam. Do not take too strong medicines. Do not take medicines which are too strong. And then he goes on to recommend musumusuke, which is an herb, and it's actually it's called Mukhya Madaraspatana. And you can find, you can do a Google search and find that this is an important, there's research on this. And its beneficial effects are being documented. Again, musumusuke, especially in the context of respiratory issues. The medical name for it is Mukhya Madaraspatana, Mukhya-Madaraspatana. So that's musumusuke, and Vallalar is recommending that. And of course, we don't want to remain in ignorance. We can use this and try. You may find, let's hope that it's available in a pure form, a relatively pure form, and not mixed up with something else. So musumusuke, he wants us to use musumusuke powdered musumusuke. And you can use it, mix it with the hot water, and you can also mix it with hot milk with some sugar and black pepper, milagin, and consume this on a regular basis. And again, he points out he emphasizes the importance of taking care of the body, which means taking care of health, which means becoming aware of its dangers that can assail us and protecting ourselves. உத்தியோகம் தடையா இருந்தால் அதை விடுத்து தேகத்தை பக்குவப்படுத்திக் கொள்ளுங்கள். If your employment comes in the way of your maintaining good health, then put emphasis on maintaining your health. Of course, that's going to be a delicate balance these days. Not many people can afford to cut back on their work hours because their lives will be jeopardized. But you still have to find a way to give priority to health. That's the main point here. There'll always be something you could do to take better care of your health. தேகம் பக்குவமா பின்பு சுவாசத்தால் உத்தியோகம் சம்பாதித்துக் கொள்ளலாம். அது பரியந்தம் கடன் பட்டாவது ஜீவனம் செய்யலாம். அது குறித்து அஞ்ச வேண்டாம். So he's saying, if you have to, if you go into debt in order to take care of your health, then do it. And then later when you are healthy again, then you can work more and then you can take care of any debts you may have fallen into. So again, notice that he asks Ratna Muraliar to give priority to health. And we can again relate it to the main spiritual teaching here. The soul, in order to develop from its state of ignorance, needs the living body. And the living body has all these cognitive instruments, Karanendriya Sagayangal, but they will all be hampered. They will be impaired in their function. They will become deficient if the body falls ill. This is all well documented. In ill health, your mind is affected. Your ability to know, understand, gets affected, and in many cases, serious, high temperatures and so forth, you fall into delirium, and you can lose your sense of awareness of things. You can get confused, and your intelligence can be hampered, if not severely undermined. So the health of the body is not anything to be taken lightly. I mean, we tend to take it for granted when we are healthy, forgetting all these abayangals. And this pandemic should really drive that lesson into our brains. Do not take the health of the body for granted, and devote much of your time and energy to keep it healthy, not for its own sake, but because that's necessary for, doing things that we need to do to develop from our state of ignorance towards spiritual enlightenment. You cannot progress towards spiritual enlightenment if your body is sick, unless you've already achieved a very high state of spiritual development. So, at our level, this is again a very important reminder to put the health of the body first. And it's sad to see people just ignoring the advice of the experts and doing all kinds of foolish things, not understanding the nature of the transmission of this virus, coronavirus. It is transmitted by air, and so if you have extended contact with someone who has this, then you are basically breathing in the virus through the droplets, aerosol, and then you're going to catch it. That's what's happened now with different people, as you may have noticed in the news. In any case, those letters indicate Valalar's serious preoccupation with the health of the body and ways to maintain that. And he did do a catalog of herbs, and he did give other kinds of advice for the maintenance of the health of the body, including, of course, his emphasis on vegetarian diet. There are early poems, for instance, in what's called the second Tirumurai, or the second canon of poems or songs. There's one called Thirumarundarul Nilai. Okay? Again, the title is Thirumarundarul Nilai, and the relevant, there are two verses here, actually four. The first one, Kanaga Anai Thiru Nedumal Ayan Potra Pulavarallam Parava Ongum Kanaga Mani Ambalatte Periya Marundondrirukka Kandeen Kandeen Kanaga Mani Ambalatte Periya Marundondrirukka Kandeen Kandeen is talking about discovering this great medicine in this Kanagamani Ambalam, or space of consciousness, higher space of consciousness, or space of higher consciousness, is discovered the existence of this great medicine. Of course, he's referring to ArutPerunJothi. Then, Thiru Nedumal Ayan Theda Turiya Nadu Oli Tena Telindor Sollum ஒரு கருணை மருந்து திரு அம்பலத்தே இருந்திட கண்டு வந்தேன். ஒரு கருணை மருந்து திரு அம்பலத்தே இருந்திட கண்டு வந்தேன். I have discovered this great medicine of compassion in this transcendental space in which it abides. Great compassionate medicine, and of course the great medicine of supreme compassion. That is ArutPerunJothi. So that's already there in an early poem that's titled, or song titled, Thirumarundarul Nilai. Thirumarundarul Nilai. But for our purposes, the verses in the Agavam, which I've been emphasizing is the key text, that those verses, there are about 16 lines celebrating the supreme healer, the supreme medicine, which is Arut, the compassion force of the Omni-Light, or ArutPerunJothi. And it's worth reciting them. Udarpini Anaithayum, Uyirpini Anaithayum, Madarbara Tavutta Arut Siva Marunde. So this supreme medicine has prevented all diseases of the body and all diseases or ailments or afflictions of the life force or life energy. Siddhikku moolamam sivamarundana ulan siddhikkum jnana thiruvarun marunde. It is the medicine that is the source of siddhi. It confers siddhi or conquest of all obstacles, including disease and death. And it is of the essence of knowledge. Jnana thiruvarun marunde. இறந்தவரெல்லாம் எழுந்திடப் புரியும் சிறந்த வல்லபொரு திருவருண் மருந்தே. Is the medicine that brings back to life those who have died. இறந்தவரெல்லாம் எழுந்திட. How are they going to wake up? Only in a new body, new living body. So essentially he is saying ArutPerunJothi is the supreme healer, the supreme medicine that brings back to life in a new body those who have died or lost their present bodies. Marana perumpiri varavage migu karana peruntiral kattiya marunde. This is of course his personal achievement. Marana perumpiri. We've been speaking of disease, and dying is the great disease. Marana perumpiri, the great disease of death, dying. This supreme medicine, the supreme healer, has enabled me to prevent the great disease of death. How? By showing me Karana Perundiral, extraordinary capacity. There is some extraordinary capacity that was revealed to him, Karana Perundiral, that enables him to conquer this great disease of death. And this, of course, was shown by the Supreme Healer to Vallala. So the verse, Marana Perumbiri Varavagemidu Karana Perundal Katya Marande means the Supreme Healer has shown me this extraordinary capacity. Must be some kind of power of consciousness, capacity of consciousness, which will overcome the great disease of death. Narai Tirai Mukavai Nannavagai Tarum Urai Tarum Perunsirudaya Nanmarude. This great medicine enables us to overcome aging and decay of the body. Now, that again has something to do with achieving a state of embodiment, achieving a body, arudegam, in which these deficiencies and afflictions are removed. They don't exist for this transformed body, which is the Sutta Pranava Jnana Vegam in Sanmarga. It has those three aspects. The transformed body is the body that's free of death and aging. And when he says, Naraitare Mupavai Nannavai Tarum Poitarum Perunsirudaya Nanmarunde, means he's saying this is the great medicine that showed him the way to achieving that body that's completely free of aging, disease, and death. Endre eninum ilameyodu irukka nandre tharum oru ஞானமா மருந்து. Yes, it's the medicine that showed him the way to be eternally youthful. Right? All kinds of people have searched for this elixir of youth and all that. But in Sanmargam, we know that there is only one medicine, and that is Aru, the supreme compassion force of the divine reality that can take us to that state of eternal youth. Malathini kavuthalul valandarugindrado nalathage yaduvana nattiya marunde. All the impurities, the defilements of egoism, jealousy, craving, and so forth. All of those are diseases, actually, malathini. All of them have been averted and removed with the help of this supreme medicine. And then he concludes by saying, Sitsabai naduve tirunadam puriyum. Sitsaba is the inmost essential space of consciousness, corresponding to the forehead center, the center between the eyebrows. And in that space, this supreme healer, ArutPerunJothi, continues its dance. Sitsabai naduve tirunadam puriyum arpuda marundenum ananda marunde. So he says it's a miraculous medicine and the medicine of bliss, ananda marunde. So the contemplation of ArutPerunJothi as Siva marunde, Thiruvarul marunde, Nan marunde, Jnanama marunde, and Ananda marunde, Arpuda marunde and Ananda marunde. These are things that we can use for meditation. In fact, all these 16 lines, should constantly be reflected on with the appropriate, devotional emotions. And there is also that long poem that Prasanna read. Actually, it's much longer than where he stopped. But this poem is titled Jnanam Marunde, that is the medicine of knowledge or wisdom, Jnana Marunde. And again, it's a celebration of ArutPerunJothi as the medicine of wisdom and as medicine, I think Prasanna read some of the verses, but I would like to read through all of them. So let me go ahead and do that as a recitation, and those of you who are listening hopefully will reflect on these lines in your mind. So he starts by saying, Jnana marundim marundu sugam nalgiya sirsabha nada marundu. Again, the medicine of wisdom. Sugam nalgiya sirsabha nada marundu. It's medicine that restores happiness, bliss, sugam, which is also freedom from disease and suffering, pain, etc. Sirsabha nada marundu. Again, we come back to the sirsabha nada marundu. This is the essential, inmost center of consciousness. It is present there. As it is present everywhere, therefore it's also present there, but the emphasis seems to be on the Chitsabha, the hall of consciousness is the literal translation, which is again telling us that you cannot find ArutPerunJothi by splitting the atom and so on and so forth. It's not a physical entity. Obviously, a physical entity would be finite and subjected to various limitations, and ArutPerunJothi, the ultimate divine reality, is not like that. So where can we find this? Jesus said, kingdom of heaven is within you. And Balalar is saying it's in the Chitsabha, which is within you, in the inmost sphere or dimension of your own consciousness. And the word inmost here means that you can't hope to find it by just closing your eyes and just wallowing in the thoughts and feelings or staying at that level. You cannot find it at the subconscious level either, dreams and so forth. It's not there. It's not even in the deep sleep state. It's beyond the deep sleep state. And so it can only be understood, realized, experienced in extraordinary states of meditation, of deep contemplation and absorption with the appropriate emotions, devotional emotions towards ArutPerunJothi. That's why he keeps saying Sitsavai, which is the inmost realm of consciousness. ArutPerunJothi மருந்து என்னை ஐந்தொழில் செய்தற் கழித்த மருந்து, பொருட்பெரும் போக மருந்து என்னை புறத்தும் அகத்தும் புணர்ந்த மருந்து. So the basic import here is ArutPerunJothi மருந்து, that is the omni-light as medicine. And then he says it has endowed him with various powers, including the 5 powers of creation, preservation, destruction, obscuration, and revelation. Those are the 5 central powers in Saiva Siddhanta, and he does refer to those powers. And in fact, they are the basic powers of consciousness. If you examine the activities of consciousness and the products of consciousness, or what you call mind, you will find that they fall into one or the other of these 5 categories. Either it's creative, or it's preservative, maintaining something or sustaining something, or it's destroying, destructive, or it's either obscuring or covering things up, or it's revealing, unraveling or revealing. So these are actually the 5 basic functions of all consciousness. And these powers were given to him in full form by ArutPerunJothi மருந்து. எல்லாம் செய்வல்ல மருந்து, என்னுள் என்றும் விடாமல் இனிக்கும் மருந்து, சொல்லால் அளவா மருந்து. You can't measure it with words. சுயஞ்ஜோதி ArutPerunJothi மருந்து. It's self-sufficient, self-existent light. சுயஞ்ஜோதி, self-existent light, ArutPerunJothi மருந்து, medicine. The medicine that is the self-existent light. காணாது காட்டும் மருந்து என்றன் கையிற்போர் கங்கணம் கட்டு மருந்து, ஆனாகி பெண்ணாம் மருந்து, அதுவாகி மணிமன்றில் ஆளும் மருந்து. Sutta Sanmarga மருந்து. This is the great medicine that we obtain on the path of Sutta Sanmarga. Arutsodi malayil kulangum மருந்து. It is at the apex of the mountain of this light of grace. It's the medicine that's at the apex of on top of the mountain of grace, light of grace. Sutta Sanmarga மருந்து, அருட்சோதி மலையில் துலங்கும் மருந்து, சித்துருவான மருந்து. It's of the form of consciousness. It's not material stuff. சித்துருவான மருந்து. என்னை சித்தலாம் செய்வித்த மருந்து. அன்பர்க்கெளிய மருந்து. It can be obtained easily by those who have love. அன்பர்க்கெளிய மருந்து, who have love for it. மற்றை ஐவர்க்கும் காண்டற்கரிய மருந்து. No other beings, super duper aliens, extraterrestrial gods, etc., they cannot obtain it. They cannot understand this medicine. But this subtlest medicine, subtler than the subtlest medicine, is easily obtainable by its true lovers. So again, an emphasis on cultivating true love and devotion towards this ultimate divine reality. ஐவர்க்கும் காண்டற்கரிய மருந்து, என்பற்றல் ஓங்கும் மருந்து, என்னை இன்ப நிலையில் இருக்கும் மருந்து, நாதாந்த நாட்டு மருந்து, goes beyond the realm of the primal sound, Om. பரஞான வரியில் நடிக்கும் மருந்து, ஓதாந்தர் கெய்து மருந்து, என்னுள் பொன்னடி காட்டி புணர்ந்த மருந்து. என்னுள் பொன்னடி காட்டி புணர்ந்த மருந்து. Revealed itself within his own consciousness, within himself. ஆதி அநாதி மருந்து, திரு அம்பலத்தை நடமாடும் மருந்து, ஜோதிமயமா மருந்து. It's eternal medicine, Thiru Ambalathai Nadamada Marundu, the medicine that dances, as it were, in the supreme space of consciousness. Jodi Mayama Marundu, it's of the essence of light. Ennai Sodiyada Anda Thiriyam Marundu. It enveloped him in its light, this medicine. Aranda Thongum Marundu, Adar Kapalum Ana Marundu. Urandam illa marundu எனக்குள்ளே கலந்த உறவா மருந்து. Again, எனக்குள்ளே கலந்த உறவா மருந்து. This is a medicine. The kingdom of this medicine is within us. The kingdom of the supreme medicine is within us. It's not outside. Well, that doesn't mean we shouldn't use medicines, external medicines, but the supreme medicine is within us. And it can only be contacted by consciousness. And that means that you have to dwell on it, you have to contemplate it, you have to think about it. Sivasindhane. ArutPerunJothi Sindhane. Thought, reflection, contemplation of this. என்னுயிர் கண்பா மருந்து கலந்தென்னுயிர்க்குள்ளே இருந்த மருந்து. என்னுயிர் காக்கும் மருந்து என்றும் என்னுயிர் ஆகிய இன்ப மருந்து. என் அறிவுட்கொள் மருந்து என்றும் என் அறிவாகி இறங்கும் மருந்து. என் அறிவென்ப மருந்து என்னுள் என் அறிவுக்கறிவென்னும் மருந்து. It's the intelligence that governs my intelligence, the supreme intelligence, this medicine. ஞான மருந்து, medicine of wisdom. என் குருவான மருந்து என்றும் என் தெய்வமாகி இருக்கும் மருந்து. என் அன்னை என்னும் மருந்து என்றும் என் தந்தையாகிய இன்ப மருந்து. This blissful medicine is both my mother and father. It is my guru. It is my deity. என் பெரு வாழ்வா மருந்து என்றும் என் செல்வமாகி இருக்கும் மருந்து. என் உயிர் நட்பா மருந்து எனக் கெட்டத்து சித்தியும் இந்த மருந்து. It is my great life. It is my great wealth. It is the friend of my life energy. And it is the medicine that has given me all these siddhis or powers. என் இறையான மருந்து மகிழ்ந்தெனக்கு தன் பொன்மேனி ஈந்த மருந்து. தன் அறிவாகும் மருந்து என்னை தந்த மருந்து. எந்தன் சொந்த மருந்து. It's my own medicine. It has become my God or deity. It has joined me, as it were, become one with me, united with me. உள்ளத்தினுள்ளா மருந்து என் உயிர்க்கனாதி உறவா மருந்து. செல்லத்தரிக்கும் மருந்து என்னை சோமாக்கி கொண்ட சிவாய மருந்து. It has absorbed me in its own being. என்னை சோமாக்கி கொண்ட சிவாய மருந்து. உள்ளத்தினுள்ளா மருந்து. Again, it's within. ArutPerunJothi as marundu, the supreme marundu, is within us. So again, only way in which we can contact it and open ourselves to its influence is by meditation and by reflecting on these sorts of verses from the Agaval and other songs and so forth, and contemplating it and focusing our mind more and more on it. You can only contact it through your consciousness. மெய்ப்பொருள் என்னும் மருந்து எல்லா வேதாகமத்தும் விளங்கும் மருந்து. கைப்பொருளான மருந்து மூன்று கண் கொண்ட என் இரு கண்ணில் மருந்து. The medicine within my eye. It is the medicine that is the fruit of all the scriptures and so forth. And it is the true reality. மதியில் விளைந்த மருந்து. Again, மதியில் விளைந்த மருந்து. It grew in the soil of my mind. Back again to the point. The relationship, the understanding of ArutPerunJothi is through the means of what we call mind or consciousness. There is no other means. You can't find it in a laboratory or by going to the other parts of the universe and so forth. You cannot find it. It's within. Kingdom of heaven is within. ArutPerunJothi மருந்து is within. மதியில் விளைந்த மருந்து யாருக்கும் மதிக்கப்படாத பொன் வண்ண மருந்து. கதி தரும் இன்ப மருந்து அருட்கண்ணால் என்னை கலந்த மருந்து. Again, speaking of how it united with him and absorbed him in its own being and transformed him into its own being. Karpura Jodi Marundu. So, camphor is something we want to use also to purify the air, and it's been done traditionally in Indian temples. And I got some camphor from the Indian store the other day, so that would be something to also do when you're talking about, because this virus spreads by the air. To purify the air, one of the ways in which we can purify the air is to light camphor. We can have a lamp-like thing and we can burn camphor. Or you can even take it around from one room to another room to cleanse the room. And there may be other things you can do with camphor. In fact, there's camphor ointments and so forth that you could use. So in any case, camphor, Karpura Jodi Marundu. And camphor, I believe, has antiviral properties. Give me just a second here. Yes. They have found that camphor is an antiviral compound. There is some articles about that. So there is a good reason why Vallalar is emphasizing Karpura Jodi Marundu. So that's something to keep in mind. See, there are all these hints that are given by Vallalar out of compassion. And we only have our stupidity to blame if we don't take note of those things and implement. So camphor is something to use. Karpura Jodi Marundu, Pasum Karpura Nanmanam Kattu Marundu, Porpuvin Ongum Marundu, and Darpodum Tavittu Sitpodum Marundu. Removed my egoism and so forth. Melai Valiya Marundu, Nan Vendudorallam Vilayum Marundu, Salai Vilattu Marundu, Sutta Samarasa Sanmarga Sangha Marundu. This is the supreme medicine in this path of the Sutta Sanmarga Sangam. And in fact, Sutta Sanmargam is itself a great medicine because it has come from ArutPerunJothi, this path of Sutta Sanmarga. So that's why he says Sutta Samarasa Sanmarga Sangam Marundu. So of course the medicine that the members of Sutta Samarasa Sanmargam turn towards, but the path of Sutta Samarasa Sanmargam itself is a great medicine to cure all these ills of body, life and mind. என்னை தானாக்கும் மருந்து, இங்கே இறந்தாரை எல்லாம் எழுப்பும் மருந்து, தின்னும் மெய்சோதி மருந்து, அருட்சோதியால் என்னை துலக்கும் மருந்து. So Arutsodi and Marundu, this Marundu is of the nature of Arutsodi, or immense light of compassion. So you can see that's a recurrent attribute or quality that Vallalar invokes. Inge irandare ellam எழுப்பும் மருந்து. All those who die are brought back to life, not in the same body necessarily, but in new bodies. That's reincarnation. So irandare ellam எழுப்பும் மருந்து means those who have lost their present bodies are brought into new bodies by this medicine. Poyar Karida Marundu cannot be approached with a mind full of falsehood. Yennai Purattum Magattum Punarna Marundu. It pervades the inner and outer aspects of my being. Kaiyir Kidaitha Marundu, Sivagama Kodiyai Kalanda Marundu. Anavam Tirkum Marundu. It removes the disease of egoism and the resulting effects of selfishness, arrogance, and so forth. Paramananda Tandava Madu Marundu, Anava Vanna Marundu, Ennai Valiya Aithu Valakkum Marundu. It enables me to grow, to develop. Ennai Valakkum Marundu. Vanadu Vanam Marundu, Ennai Mamani Mere Mel Vaitha Marundu, Unam Tavitha Marundu, Kalandulle Inikindra Unmai Marundu. Kalandu Ulle Inikindra Unmai Marundu. Again, it's all happening within consciousness, within what you call mind. Actually, consciousness goes beyond the mind, but, sometimes they're used interchangeably. மலை இலக்கான மருந்து என்றன் மறைப்பை தவிர்த்த மெய் வாழ்க்கை மருந்து கலை நலம் காட்டு மருந்து எங்கும் கண்ணாகி காணும் கனத்த மருந்து. அற்புத ஜோதி மருந்து. Again we see Jodi associated with marundu. Now this may be okay, yeah, I can just mention this, maybe take it up later. The worship of Jodi, in light of these lines, Arutha Jodi Marundu, which is the medicine that's also the miraculous light, or the miraculous light of medicine, and so forth, or the medicine actually, which is miraculous light. It's the medicine which is also miraculous light of grace or compassion, Arutha Jodi. This means, again, there is a method that you can use of Jodi Varipadu, which is the light, and looking at the light as the manifestation, in fact, of this divine reality. So when you look at the light, you can also look at it as a symbol of divine reality, as a meditation aid. And that's something also we need to be doing on this path. And when you look at the light, the Jodi, in the Valakku or the lamp, you then associate Marundu with it. Okay? So you invoke and you contemplate the aspect of supreme medicine that this light is. This light is the supreme medicine, Marundu. Okay, and the quality of the supreme medicine is manifested in this light and is entering my body and cleansing me of all these adverse elements of disease and so forth. So that's the kind of meditation that should be done. And it can be done, of course, with a lamp in front of you. And maybe mentally you can also recite some of these verses. So focusing on the Jodi and invoking its medicinal properties is an important form of meditation. There is also research on the medicinal properties or effects of light. I may touch on that later on, maybe some other talk, but you may want to pursue that and find out more about it. We found that light itself has some healing properties. Arutha Jodi Marundu Ellam Agi Andragi Amarnu Marundu Tappadam Tanda Marundu Engum Tano Tanagi Tanikka Marundu Tannai Alutha Marundu Endrum Sagada Nalvaram Tanda Marundu. The medicine that bestows immortality. Ponnadi in the Marundu Arutponagam Tanda Punida Marundu. It's holy medicine, sacred medicine. Kannukiniya Marundu Endran Kaipurulanda Katti Marundu, Tanga Katti Marundu, Endran Kaipurulanda Tanga Katti Marundu. Yennu Karanga Marundu Yennai Yeda Kuyiru Kedutha Marundu. Lifted me from sinking into the depths of ignorance and suffering and so forth. Suttaparada Marundu Endran Thukkamum Sorvum Thalaitha Marundu. எட்டுதற்கொன்னா மருந்து நான் எட்டி பிடிக்க இசைந்த மருந்து என்றன் தூக்கமும் சோர்வும் தொலைத்த மருந்து. Speaking of உடற்பிணி and உயிர்ப்பிணி, sleep and exhaustion were eliminated by this medicine. என்றன் தூக்கமும் சோர்வும், of course he's talking about his own case, removed sleep, which doesn't mean that there was no restfulness. The rest that Vallalar had was not our kind of sleep, where we sink into ignorance, basically, lack of awareness and so forth. And then we emerge from it almost like we emerge from a state of death. That's not the kind of restfulness that Vallalar indicates that he had. Thukam was removed, but that doesn't mean that there was no rest. The rest was of a very higher form. I mean, we get our rest from what we call sleep. But Vallalar's rest for his body was not based on sleep. It was based on this inner experience of divine reality. என்றன் தூக்கமும் சோர்வும் தொலைத்த மருந்து எட்டுதற்கொண்டா மருந்து நான் எட்டி பிடிக்க இசைந்த மருந்து உன்னர் கரிதா மருந்து எனக்கு உள்ளும் புறத்தும் உலாவும் மருந்து. Again, notice உள்ளும் புறத்தும் உலாவும் மருந்து. Inner. It is there present, it pervades the inner and the out of his being. தன்னன் தனித்த மருந்து சுத்த சாக்கிராதீத சவேச மருந்து. It's a pure consciousness that is not subject to all the modifications that our minds undergo. Remembering something and then forgetting, knowing something and then not knowing, being aware and then being unconscious. It doesn't undergo any of these things. ஒன்றில் ஒன்றான மருந்து அந்த ஒன்றில் இரண்டாகி ஓங்கும் மருந்து அன்றி மூன்றான மருந்து நான்காகி ஐந்தாகி அமர்ந்து மருந்து. Wonderful lines. It's basically it's alluding to the different mantras, based on the syllables, Panchaksharam and so forth, Namaskivaya. He's talking about all these forms of mantras based on the number of syllables, and he's saying it is that medicine that has become all these different syllables and mantras are constituted of those syllables. வெளிக்குள் வெளியா மருந்து எல்லா வெளியும் கடந்து வழங்கும் மருந்து ஒளிக்குள் ஒளியா மருந்து. Again, ஒளி, light and மருந்து எல்லா ஒளியும் தானாகிய உண்மை மருந்து. ஆறாறு கப்பால் மருந்து, gone beyond all the tattuvams and the elements of nature. அதற்கப்புற தீராறு கப்பால் மருந்து, transcends all of nature. ஈராதி இல்லா மருந்து, என்னை எல்லாம் செய்த இன்ப மருந்து. ஆரணத்தோங்கும் மருந்து, அருள் ஆகமமாகி அன்னைக்கும் மருந்து, காரணம் காட்டு மருந்து, எல்லாம் கண்ட மருந்து, என்னுள் கொண்ட மருந்து. மலம் ஐந்து நீக்கும் மருந்து, removes all the defilements or impurities. புவி வானண்டம் எல்லாம் வளர்க்கும் மருந்து, it sustains the earth and the heavens. நலமிக்கருளும் மருந்து, தானே நானாகி தானாலும் நாட்டு மருந்து. ஞான மருந்தின் மருந்து சுகம் நல்கிய சிற்சபாதாரம். So this again, these lines celebrating ArutPerunJothi as marundu, ஞான மருந்து. This can also be used in meditation, reflection and contemplation. Now I mentioned light and medicine, and you can, when you use the Jyoti in the contemplation of ArutPerunJothi, as a means of contemplating ArutPerunJothi, associate the healing powers, supreme healing powers, with that Jyoti. And mentally you have to visualize those supreme healing powers of that Jyoti entering your body. And this, of course, you can't just do it for 1 or 2 days and then expect results. This has to be a practice. Let's call it Jyoti Marundu Vazhipaadu. Jyoti Marundu Vazhipaadu. When you look at the Jyoti, associate it, of course, with ArutPerunJothi, but also think of it as Jnana Marundu. Also as Marundu that removes all ills of the body and life and mind. Now, we know that Vallalar has referred to stellar light, solar light, and lunar light, and of course Deepavali. What I would say is the 3 forms of light here: Suryavali, Chandiravali, and Deepavali. So there's the light of the sun. So if you're out, you can see sunrises or sunsets, and then do this meditation practice. Associate that with ArutPerunJothi and also the supreme healing powers of ArutPerunJothi. And then lunar light. When you look at the moon, you can do the same practice. If you're sitting in your backyard or something and you see the moon, you can continue with the same practice. That's the Madi, which is also celebrated as a manifestation of ArutPerunJothi, Thiruvalar Madiye and so forth in Agaval. You can again associate ArutPerunJothi with that lunar light and moonlight, and again associated the supreme healing powers of ArutPerunJothi with that lunar light that's falling on you. And then, of course, Deepavali, I've already mentioned the practice of Deepavali. Now, as to some practical means, this Marundu, Vallalar has indicated that the supreme medicine has also shown him herbs that can be used, and I presume that the suggestions that Vallalar gives on maintaining health, on diet, and so forth, all come from the revelation of ArutPerunJothi. And in that context, let's remember the use of hot water. So these get to practical things. So someone can say, okay, you said all this about ArutPerunJothi, how we have to meditate on ArutPerunJothi as the supreme light, the supreme medicine, and so forth, but are there any practical things we can do? And this is, of course, the most practical thing you can do, but when it comes to material, physical items or means, Vallalar has given us a number of things there. I've already mentioned camphor, and you can look up the data on antiviral properties of camphor. Manjal is also something we can use. You know, in Siddha medicine, manjal, black pepper, turmeric, black pepper, ginger, and garlic. These are central spices in Siddha medicine. And you can use them, quite generously in your cooking, and sprinkling it even on salads and so forth. Turmeric is antiviral, that's well documented, and so is garlic. Now, hot water, I mentioned hot water. We use hot water. And I have also mentioned camphor. Use of camphor to purify the air. What else? Diet. We already know vegetarian diet, and there are many hints in the Agaval on the use of fruits and so forth. Now, when it comes to herbs, Karisalang Kanni, it's called Eclipta alba, and you can obtain it. Karisalang Kanni powder you can use, and in fact, mix it with hot water and drink it, gargle it even, and even mix it with hot milk and drink on a regular basis. The other ones are Thulilite. It's, in fact, Vallalar mentions that in, there are these notes called Marutu of Puruthu, and they're full of a lot of nonsense, but when you find things there that conform to evidence, okay, scientific research, then you can be pretty sure that it was probably mentioned by Vallalar, because Vallalar was never given to saying things out of the top of his head, or what's called bullshit, or just talking some nonsense. He never did that. So anything that's in accordance, anything that you find in these Puruthugal that's in accordance with science of medicine, science of diet, and so on and so forth, scientific research, you can take it that it came from Vallalar, because he was really rooted in truth, grounded in truth. Now, Thuduvali is a remarkable respiratory herb. And there's a lot of research. The botanical name is Solanum trilobate, and apparently it's called in English the purple-fruited tea egg plant. And it's an important medicinal plant in Siddha medicine, Kayakalpa Mulige, and it's used for respiratory problems. It's used widely in the treatment of tuberculosis, bronchial asthma, difficulty in breathing, sinus, chest condition, and other respiratory problems. And the note here says its anti-inflammatory properties and antimicrobial activity helps asthma patients with a fresh breath of life. That's what we should be looking at now, to protect ourselves from the baneful effects of the COVID-19 coronavirus, because it attacks your respiratory system. And you basically die suffocating and gasping for breath. It destroys your lungs. It also can attack your other organs like kidney and liver, as I said, but its prime target seems to be the lungs. And so anything that we can use to fortify our respiratory system is welcome. Karisalangani is one, Thuruvalai is another. So these two things, you really have to look for them and use them. And I've also mentioned manjal. It's anti-inflammatory. You can always mix a little bit of manjal with hot milk, add a little bit of honey to it, and add some black pepper, which is what I do. And you can get various herbal teas, turmeric root and so forth, manjal root. Those things can be used. But again, Vallala's great contribution here is to emphasize Karisalangani, Eclipta alba, and Thuruvalai, the Solanum trilobetum, which, people who have discovered trilobetum, Solanum trilobetum's highly beneficial effects to treat tuberculosis and so forth, respiratory problems, pretty sure they had no idea that there was a person by the name of Vallala who actually recommended it in the 1850s, 1860s. You know that he did the Mooligay Attavane, and the Mooligay Guna Attavane is something to go through at this time. And anything that looks like it will be beneficial to maintain the health of the lungs, you want to take note of that and pursue it. And if you can obtain it, hopefully in a pure form, that's another problem we have with people mixing things up, being dishonest. But hopefully there is at least one or two honest people in India, southern India. I think there are some vendors here also that you can find online, herbs, herbalists, those who sell herbs. And if you can find Thuruvalai and Karisalangani, get it and use it regularly. I suppose that's basically it. I don't think I have anything else. I have some notes here, but maybe that can be pursued at on another occasion. Now, the lessons of the pandemic. The pandemic, of course, the main lesson, as I said, is the evil karma of torturing animals and killing animals and eating their flesh. But it's also showing us that these things are global. Vallala, when he speaks of Pini, it's talking about the human condition. In fact, the condition of all Jivaga. That's why it's called Jivagarnya Vilkam. It's not showing compassion to Americans or to Chinese or anything like that. And it's idiotic to refer to the virus as a foreign virus, as the president did. But that's the game he plays, Blame it all on foreigners and immigrants and so forth, but we don't need to succumb to that kind of rank ignorance. It afflicts everyone. So it's killed people all over the world, and the Americans are not immune to it, even if some of them think they are. And that shows us. And in fact, Jack Ma, the Chinese billionaire, had to come up with this lesson for Americans. He sent millions of masks and so forth, testing kits, thousands of testing kits, and he made a good point. He said, we can only do this collectively. We can't have all these kinds of borders preventing the flow of badly needed medicines and other resources to combat this pandemic. That's Jack Ma, the Chinese billionaire, who's telling this. Okay, and he's right on target. Yeah, it's a global effort, and that's where Anmaneya Vurumaipada comes in. This is the lesson also in learning Anmaneya Vurumaipada. Viruses don't have any nationality. Okay, there are no immigrant viruses. They just attack living bodies because, as I said, as Vallala pointed out, these are Maya in Vigarpa Jalanga. stem from the nature of this impure matter, the universe of impure matter in which we live. So combating these viruses and all that, epidemics, pandemics, requires a global effort. And nationalistic barriers and other kinds of barriers, group barriers, are a severe obstacle to dealing with this problem and overcoming it quickly. You know, the world, all the countries have the resources. They just have to work together, put it all together. You can't think in nationalistic terms. You can't think, oh, it's not happening that much in America. Well, it will. According to the projections of experts, this will spread, and, thousands of lives are going to be gone here unless they take more severe measures. They delayed their response, even acknowledging the severity of the problem, and the testing was inadequate. That's why we didn't have a full measure of the problem, because if you don't test people, you don't know whether they have it. Okay? They're waking up slowly to all that in this richest and most powerful country in the world, but it can't just be solved within the borders of the United States. It's something that you do. You got to work with the Chinese. They have first-hand knowledge of this. You have to work with the Italians. The Chinese, in fact, have sent teams to Italy. And the Italians are not saying, oh, yeah, it's just an Italian thing, let's handle it by ourselves. No, they're open to the help that is offered by the Chinese, who have been its first victims. And so, the emphasis is has to be on global solidarity. You have to go beyond nationalistic barriers and prejudices and all that, and all the nations have to work together. That's the whole, that's the point of this value in Sutta Sanmargam, Anmaneya Urmi Pada. And it extends beyond humans to those animals who are horribly mistreated and killed in those markets in China and elsewhere, in Asia and other places. So these are some of the lessons to draw from this. But we have to do what we can to protect ourselves and members of our family. And the path of Sutta Sanmargam is extraordinarily rich. It's rich enough to give us suggestions, hints, to preserve our health. And they are specific. It's not just, take care of your body. No, there are specific things that Vallalar has mentioned. Karpuram, Karisalanganni, Thudulai, Venneer, and many associated things like Melagu and so forth, black pepper and so on. So, if we take some of these kurukas or notes that are in agreement with the scientific research, then we can go far in preserving our health, protecting our health, which is a prime necessity now. Okay? So, again, should help us, hopefully the sketches that I have offered you should help us to really understand the depth and richness of the teachings of Vallalar and the path of Sutta Sanmargam. Ultimately, of course, we're going to have to rely on the supreme medicine, ArutPerunJothi. And I have already indicated how that is to be done in terms of the Diva Vaipada light, and associating the light with ArutPerunJothi and ArutPerunJothi's manifestation as the supreme medicine. So this is all internal. This is all in consciousness. The other things, of course, pertain to the body, but more important, the central thing here is what we do in our minds or with our minds, and that is the contemplation of ArutPerunJothi as the supreme healer and Aru as the supreme medicine. And I hope I've given you some indications as to how to actually go about doing that. So, Udatvini Anaithayum, Virtvini Anaithayum, Adalparatavitha, Arutsiva Marunde, Sittikku Moolamam, Sivamarundena, Ullam Sittikkum Jnana Thiruvarul Marunde, Irandavareல்லாம் எழுந்திடப் புரியும் சிறந்த வல்லப ஒரு திருவருள் மருந்தே, மரணப் பெரும்பினி வாரா வகைமிகு கரணப் பெருந்தெழு காட்டிய மருந்தே நரைத்திரை மூப்பவை நன்னாவகை பெரும் உரைப்பெரும் பெரும் சீருடைய நன்மருந்தே என்றே எனும் நிலைமையோடு இருக்க நன்றே தரும் ஒரு ஞானமா மருந்தே மலப்பினி தவிர்த்தருள் வளம் தருகின்றதோ நலத்தகை அதுவன நாட்டிய மருந்தே சிற்சபை நடுவே திருநலம் புரியும் அற்புத மருந்து என்னும் ஆனந்தம். There's just one point I want to make in closing. Tanithiru, or the emphasis on solitude, is one of the things we are expected to follow in Siddha Sanmargam, especially for earnest aspirants on the path of Siddha Sanmargam. And, they're talking about isolating yourself as the best way to protect yourself from getting infected. So, but then, we don't want to succumb to depression and all that as a consequence of going into solitude. We have the Agavat to think about. We have the writings of Allah to think about. And then whatever charitable actions we can do, we continue to do that. Helpful actions that we can undertake even, towards our own family members and friends, we can continue to do that. But the emphasis on solitude also becomes very significant in the context of this pandemic. And I want to again say we really cannot underestimate this pandemic. Okay? All the top experts are saying that, that's why the World Health Organization calls it a pandemic. So I would encourage all listeners, those of you who've been listening, to take all these measures that Siddha Sanmargam offers and then science offers us. Again, Siddha Sanmargam is not about anti-scientific faith healing. We take into account science. Vallallar himself emphasized the use of medicines and so forth. So we use all that, the external means. And then for the internal, we have, of course, the meditation on ArutPerunJothi as the supreme healer. And there are many verses, including the ones that I've just read, that help us to do that. And let us pray that ArutPerunJothi will enable humans, ignorant humans, to wake up to reality and to work together to overcome this extreme danger of the COVID-19. ArutPerunJothi, 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 Tanithiru, ArutPerunJothi.
Thank you very much. It was with